Hello, I'm Camille Zimmerman. The letters behind my name just mean I'm a licensed speech therapist. This session is behavior management for church and school in cross-cultural settings. I think that applies to all of us. I just kind of want to set up the topic by saying this isn't classroom management particularly. It's not like chance to make everyone pay attention or little like stop signs for behavior charts. This is for behavior management, but it's also not de-escalation, like somebody's totally dysregulated and what do you do? This is kind of the in-between of you've got some kids acting out and what do you do? And I think I hear from a lot of people working in ministries that we have a lot of compassion for the trauma that our kids have experienced, and we don't always know how to move forward for them and helping them be engaged learners. I think everyone can admit that they're a teacher. We have a lesson plan. We're trying to teach them something about God, but like how does learning happen and how do we overcome trauma to make learning happen? Not always, we don't always know. So let me see if my clicker works. Yes, this is our itinerary today. I believe in schedules, so you'll get a lot of this. We're starting with an about me. We're gonna talk about today's takeaways. You'll learn a little bit about how learning happens, the basics of behavior management, which I want to say are to be proactive and respond, not just react. And then hopefully we'll have time for a Q&A, and like a good educator, I will give you some homework. My name is Camille. I'm a bilingual speech therapist. I do speak Spanish. And I have been working as a speech therapist for 10 years, 7 years in the New York City Public School District, and 3 years in Lebanon County, Pennsylvania. I have lived in New York for a total of 9 years. My Pennsylvania time was in the middle of all of that. And like Juan mentioned, I do attempt to lead tours, so, ooh. Now it's so responsive. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, how do I go backwards now? Thanks. So I lead something called Trips by Camille. This year my trips are going to Peru and South Korea. If you ever want to go on a trip where you don't have to plan it, and maybe you'll be mostly with Mennonites or somebody who might know me, you can check it out. I have an Instagram and a blog, but that's not why we're here today. The reason we're here today is because I want two takeaways. Your students need to know how to behave in order to know how to learn anything else. So in order for learning to happen, they actually have to be behaving. I think sometimes we think we can jump over the behavior part and just teach at them, but they actually need to be behaving in order to do that. And you'll hopefully learn at least 2 strategies to help them behave. I will talk about more. Hopefully you will learn at least 2. So, how learning happens. There are lots of ways learning happens, but you need to have background knowledge and you need to have emotional and physical regulation. You need to, whatever content you're trying to teach, they need to have some connection to it. You need to make a connection. If you're going to talk about Daniel and the lion's den, nobody knows what a lion's den is, you got to teach them background knowledge. The same goes for behavior. If you want them to come and sit, they've never had to come and sit before, kind of have to teach them that. So there's that, but then there's also just emotional and physical regulation. Just shout, okay. Your kids, they can't be triggered and upset and angry about something that happened at lunch at Kids Club at 6 p.m. because they're not going to learn anything at Kids Club. So they need to be emotionally regulated and they need to be physically regulated. Some kids you might have a lot of sensory needs and need to be moving around, and sometimes it's hard to tell how much of that movement do I allow. And so those are the things you need for learning to happen. You need to have good background knowledge. You need to have physical and emotional regulation. We'll talk about how to support that. But I want to apply these things to behavior. I think most of us probably went to Sunday school since before we were born, but our students probably haven't, and they probably don't know what's expected of them. And Like Keyshawn mentioned, he did a lot of things with Mennonites that he didn't always know he was getting into. We can actually communicate it. It doesn't have to be a mystery. So it also, some of that confusion leads to breakdowns and behaviors acting out that if we would communicate ahead of time, it would help. So I want us to use these principles. Oh, I went too far. What did I do? I want to use these principles in order to address behavior. This means you need to know what your kids already know and what they need to be taught. Do they know how to sit for a long time? Do they know how to make a line when they line up? What do they know? What do they know about what you're expecting of them? Do they know how Kids Club works? Do they know what the routine is? And what can you teach them about that? And then what do they need to be emotionally and physically regulated? Some of our kids are not going to have good attachment strategies, good managing our own frustration strategies, all of that. And what do they know and what do they need to be regulated in order for them to be mentally engaged, understand your topic, and remember it later? If you want to teach them about God, those things need to be in place or they will not learn anything. Sorry. And for this, our mindset matters. If you haven't heard these terms before, fixed mindset is a fatalistic view that everything is the way it is and it won't change. A growth mindset is something educators need to have. It is the realistic fact that children can learn and grow and they will change. I work in special ed. Those kids grow slowly, but they do. And it's because you give them support and because you're patient and because you teach them. Not because you expect that they already know it. You have to teach them, but they do learn and grow. So we have to have a growth mindset. I think some people have been talking about believing in the fact that change can happen, is believing that they can get there. You know, I have very challenging students this year, and some of them, it took them from September to February for us to okay, I think maybe they know how therapy works, and this week they still lost their prize. So it's a process. But part of it is we need to redeem the narrative. These are all things I have heard people say about clubs. Kids have a lot of trauma. They just need to be loved. Their school's crazy. Of course, they don't know how to behave in club. They don't know any better, so can't really expect any better. They're used to being yelled at. That's all they respond to. We can't spank them, so there's nothing we can do. Their parents don't care. They're having a bad day. And they fight all day at school. Of course they're going to fight here. And these are fixed mindset comments. These are period at the end, nothing I can do to make this better for them. And I want us to believe that we can redeem that. That they might have trauma, but this is a place where they can start to heal. And they do need to be loved, but they also need to be taught. And their school is crazy, but this place doesn't need to be. And they don't know any better, and I can teach them better. And they're used to being yelled at, but not from me. I respect them, and I'm not going to yell at my students. And we can spank them, but that's fine. There are lots of other strategies to managing behavior besides spanking. Their parents, they probably do care, but even if they don't, I do, and I know better, and I'm going to do better. And they're having a bad day, and I want to help it get better. They fight all day at school, but they know that this is a place we don't fight. So telling ourselves even that this can be better for them, that we can make it better for them, we can expect better from them. Nobody rises to a lower expectation. We need to create an expectation where this club is safe, VBS is safe, school is safe. That's what we expect. And we expect that you're going to come and be ready to learn. And if you aren't, how can I help you? How can we get there? So how can we get there? First, we need to be proactive. Set up your classroom well, use your furniture, make sure things flow together, not a lot of traffic jams. If you have kids who get distracted easily, maybe don't face them towards the hallway where everything is passing by all the time. If you have kids who fight, make some assigned seats. If you have kids who run out of the class, put yourself or furniture between them and the door to make a little obstacle. If you have kids that go under the table, this is a cool trick, move the table. They won't be under it anymore. So use your furniture well so that it even can help kids be regulated. And making a schedule, this is my very most favorite thing to do, if you can't tell. It It doesn't matter what your schedule looks like. It just needs to be a list. It can be typed. It can be the same thing every week. It can be written on a wipe-off board. Whatever you want it to do. It can be pictures. It can be words. If your kids can't read, it actually doesn't matter because they still learn. There are 5 things that I have to get through. And it's a good point of reference to turn to and say, this is how long you're here. This is what you can know to expect from me. This is what I expect that we will complete today. And if they're going, when is snack? You can say, oh, it's number 5. And when it just gives you a point of reference. And also when you have things posted in your class to refer your kids to, it makes it less about you and them. It's less like, well, they said I'm doing this at this time. It's like, oh, it's here. Like, it's a third party happening. And the other reason I love it so much is it is the easiest way to onboard new people. Especially if you have a lot of turnover coming in every week, they'll know what you're doing today. They don't have to know how club works because you're going to tell them. And I think for some of us, we've been going to all of these events for a long time, and we know how Sunday school works and how club works and how school works, and we actually want some variety. We're like, yeah, let's be spontaneous and change it up. It's not really helpful to have that. It's helpful to have a schedule. The other thing I would say is, especially if you have classes hard time transitioning, this is very helpful so they know what they're transitioning for. And I try to always end with the same thing so that it's a cue that this is the end and now you're transitioning home. So this is whatever your end thing is. In my speech sessions, it's their folder and attendance. In club, it might be attendance also, or snack, or whatever your thing is that cues them in, we're packing up and we're leaving. It helps them make that transition. This is an example of what my very basic schedule looks like. This is my schedule for speech. This kid is working on all these sounds. This is a visual timer. If you have kids who really struggle with things, having a visual timer that counts down, the red gets smaller as the time runs out. You can Google visual timers if you really feel like it's helpful. This kid always gets an iPad at the end of their session, so that's me drawing a picture of an iPad. And establishing your rules. So just like you have a schedule on the board, have your rules on the board. You know what you expect from them, but they don't need to read your mind. So you can tell them, but make your rules kind of vague and broad, because the more specific they are, the more exceptions will be found. So make them nice and broad. Be safe, be respectful, follow directions quickly. It's on the board, we all know what they are, and when you break them, I can say, oh, that was rule number 2. Remember the rules. Very easy point of reference that kind of helps corral some behaviors. Review the rules at the start of every class until they are familiar, and especially if you have any new kids. And keep them posted at all times. The kids who want to follow the rules do not need them to be there, but the kids who don't want to do. And then you need to establish your consequences. What's your reward for following the rules? What's your consequence for not following the rules? I know we want kids to just be intrinsically good and just do the right thing anyway. But in life, I go to work because I get paid. I like my job, but I want a reward. We all have natural rewards and consequences for our behaviors, and communicating what those are sometimes helps, especially defiant kids, know what they're working towards. And oh, actually, if I do this, I'm not getting that thing that I wanted. It's having a consequence on me. So customize it for your students and their age. I find that prize boxes work very well, but some ages might want an extra game time, choice activities, whatever things they like. I think maybe as a culture we're not very reward-based, but it is a positive way to say, you did a great job today. You were kind and polite, and you followed directions quickly. You did all of our rules. That's great. I'm going to give you a stamp on your attendance sheet. Whatever little thing it is, to reinforce and praise them for doing well or managing their own behaviors. So in your process of being prepared, make sure your lessons are engaging and fun. Make sure you're in a good mood. You can act, it doesn't have to be real. They're children. You need to be positive and happy to be there so that they can be happy to be there also. And allow for some things that you kind of need to think through maybe why they are the way they are. If they need to sit or stand, I usually allow it. If it's distracting to them, they lose that privilege. But if it helps them pay attention, my goal is for them to learn, so I don't really care. I also allow for fidgets. I give out paper clips. If the paper clips start fighting, then I take them in timeout. But if they help them pay attention because they're clipping something together and that's helping them listen, it's helpful. It's good. You want them to learn. They don't have to be little angel children. They need to be attentive enough to learn. And I do, I'm sorry. I'm over here. I also like to park or time out things. Sometimes I write little wipe-off marker spots on my table, and like, this is the garage for whatever that you brought that's distracting, and I don't want you to touch the whole session. Or there's a timeout zone on my table where things go if they get distracting. If anything falls on the floor, it goes in timeout. And my students know it. Like, once that's the rule, they'll just hand it to you when it falls on the floor because it's going in timeout. And I'm like, didn't know where it needed to stay, so it's going in timeout, even though they're the one that dropped it. Because not all behavior management needs to be like you failed and you're in trouble. It can be like you're learning, and you're learning how to, the boundaries of where things should be and how to be in class. So take time to practice. I think a lot of times we want behavior to have been learned already. And maybe in our home environment, we learned how to behave before we went out into public, and so we think they should know how to behave. And so, of course, they already know how, and so they don't know how, then it must mean that they are trying to be defiant. Maybe they are, but we want to, like, help them understand or something, I don't know. And we don't really want to take the time to teach them. And we think that if we just, like, power through the lesson, we're getting through, we have a lesson we're trying to teach, and we want to get through it, and we're just trying to get through it. And if you don't take the time to manage the behaviors that come up at the beginning of the class, you will spend every class the rest of the year dealing with it. So you might as well sacrifice one lesson and get it worked out, and hopefully lose less time over the course of the year dealing with those behaviors. It also helps you and your students have a growth mindset about what you're learning, about how to learn to be in class, and it gives natural consequences. So if you're like, I'm expecting you to do this, and you aren't doing this, must mean you need to practice. The big one I do with a lot with my kids is they like to jump down the stairs. Rule number 1 in my class is to be safe, so jumping is not allowed. If you need to practice, you can walk the stairs again. If they do it a lot, then they lose the stamp. But just natural consequences that allow them not to get in trouble, but to practice what they should be doing. So we have a plan, we have our schedule, we have our rules, we're going to be fun and engaging, we don't care if they have a fidget, we're ready to go. And then we're moving into, okay, but things still happen, so like, what do we do with that? In order to respond, we need to think about why our students are having a breakdown, what is the cause of it, in order to offer some support. So here are some things that might be going on. Some of your students are probably not reading on grade level. You're maybe not writing on grade level, and I'm going to guess maybe your curriculum is not accounting for that. I just want to encourage you that these ministries are not a test. If you're in class, those are tests, but a lot of ministries are not a test, so read aloud to them, let them copy from you, give them a word bank, start the sentence and let them finish it. Allow them to be involved in the activities you have planned without making it a test and making it annoying and frustrating, because sometimes that's when the off-task stuff happens, because I hate writing at school, why would I write at club? So if they're not performing at grade level, try to support them with that. If they are and they need a challenge, make things more abstract. Ask why and how questions and less who, what, and where. Also, they might be in a mood. And they might have that mood for a reason. And I don't know that any of us are trained counselors. And I think sometimes people are like, how do we get them past the mood, get them to what I want to do? I always try to check in with my students every day. Hey, how's it going? How's your weekend? If they have something they want to talk about, it might come up then. It might come up during prayer requests. You might get a chance. And if something's bothering them, and you're like, hey, I think something's bothering you, and they're like, no, I'm like, you don't want to talk about it? I just always encourage my students to talk about it with somebody, because suppressed emotions lead to explosions. And I want children to be able to learn to process their emotions in order to be healthy adults. And even though I might not take time in my lesson, and I might not have the answer for everything, I still want to have a little check-in and make sure their mood is regulated and encourage them, okay, we're gonna make a plan. How are we going to move on and be able to be engaged tonight? Like, if that happened at lunch, did you talk to the teacher about it? Did you tell your parent? Always refer to somebody in authority to deal with problems. And then that's your plan, so how can you be engaged right now? Like, right now we're doing this, so how can you get on board with that? And walking them through that. There are also lots of coping techniques and strategies that people talk about. Deep breathing, especially if a kid is in the middle of a meltdown. Sometimes you breathing with them helps you both calm down. And just taking space, giving them space. And sometimes, just this week, I saw one of my students in the hallway having a meltdown, and I tried to talk to him, and he wouldn't talk to me. So the next day, I talked to him in my session, and I asked him what was going on. And he's like, oh, I'm locking my feelings up. I don't have to talk about them. And I said, well, I'm worried because you're locking yourself in there, too, and it's taking a long time for you to be able to participate in class. What can you do next time to not have that happen? So even those little opportunities, you're not going to have the answer all the time right away, but the windows continue to open. Another thing to keep in mind are triggers. When these meltdowns occur, what is occurring before them? What might have caused that? A lot of my students, it's transitions, anything unexpected. I have a lot of students with autism and ADHD and trauma. But it could be anything. So try to pay attention to what those things are. If it's transition time, give them a little heads up. Tell them, I need you to get ready for the fact that this is going to happen. But if it's other things, just think creatively about it and take note of them. Don't just let behaviors happen and go, oh, what's going on with this kid? Try to think critically about it. And at the end of the day, some kids want to fight. And if they want to fight, you get to remain calm. You're the adult. And you need to show your other students that they are going to be safe with you. So if you have a kid acting out and being crazy, you need to remain calm. Keep your instructions simple and to the point. Sometimes it's first this, then this. Sometimes it's just like calm, take a deep breath, take a deep breath, take a deep breath. Keep it simple. If you're doing a lot of blah, 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 blah negotiating and they're in a rage of anger, they're not hearing it. So all those words are wasted. Keep it simple and to the point. Sometimes it's helpful to give two choices. It doesn't even have to be two choices you like. So you can come to class nicely, or you can come to class and I'll call your mom. Either way, you need to come to class. Whatever it is, they might not want to come, but that's their choices. It worked for me this week. Doesn't always work. But it helps kids feel like they have a choice and they're not just cornered. And I think a lot of times kids with trauma do feel cornered because there are a lot of things in their lives that are out of their control. And I think we feel sorry for that, and we understand it, and we don't really know how to help them navigate how to be ready for a club or class or whatever. And so, yeah, we want to give them those supports. We want to be understanding, but we also still need them to be ready to learn and regulated. Sometimes it helps to wait it out. Sometimes they just need 5 minutes of silence instead of you talking them through it, but just like, I'm going to give you a few moments to think about that, so let me know when you're ready to work. And get help if you need it, especially if anyone is a danger to themselves or others. I would say that's the only time you should ever restrain a child, and even then do so very cautiously. I never close my classroom door. I'm never alone with my children without anyone being able to hear what's happening. Just being very cautious and showing my students that, yeah, we're not an isolated bubble here. We're all open and honest about what's going on. But then if you're in a situation where somebody is really defiant and unsafe, getting a support staff, removing the other kids from the room so they're not the entertainment, or like providing like onlookers that they have to maintain a sense of anger for, might help. Definitely getting help if you need it, especially if anyone is attacking you. Please get help. Sometimes it's the kid is like, you are the person that I am fighting, and it helps to remove yourself and have somebody else come in and step away from that. And administer consequences with consistency. I think the biggest thing is if you say you're going to do something because they're doing something, you need to do that thing. Don't say you're going to get kicked out of club, but then you get to stay after all. Like, or if this happens again, there'll be a consequence, but actually there wasn't because I didn't want you to have one. We often don't want kids to have bad things. Like, we think their lives are really hard, and we don't really want them to not get to come to this special activity. They lost the party time. They lost whatever because they chose that, and we don't want them to choose that, and so we kind of want to remove that consequence from them. But I found that some of my students, it gives them a sense of security to know the consequences will be administered, and they can trust me that when I say this will happen, it will happen. And sometimes they help me administer them themselves. They're like, you said I couldn't do that. I'm like, you're right. So I think that just shows that they really do want that structure and support. And another helpful thing to do is communicate. I'm skipping ahead on my slides. Regardless of the reason of why they're having a meltdown, you need to communicate to them what's expected of them and what they should be doing right now and the consequence for the choice they're making. And if they're making a bad choice, like my foster niece would say, that is my choice and I will get my consequence. That's just what you're choosing. So make sure you have their attention before you give an instruction. Narrate what you're seeing and what you want to see. I do this a lot for my kids who are not aware of their bodies in space and are doing little backflips in their chairs. And I'm like, oh, your body's doing a backflip. It's not ready to learn. Please get your body ready to learn. Have them repeat the direction back to you. What did I just say? Ask them to read your mind. What am I thinking right now? And usually if they're tipping their chair, I look at them, and I look at the chair, and I look at them, and they're like, oh yeah, and they sit down. So a little bit of mind reading, encouraging them to have a little independence to think about what they should be doing. Find your teacher voice and your hairy eyeball. You do not need to yell at your students. I think only raise your voice if you need to be heard over a crowd, but being stern sometimes helps show that you're being serious. And sometimes you have to have a little heart-to-heart. Some of my kids come in and they're just ready to fight, and everything we do is no, nope, nope, nope. And I say, oh, I'm sorry, Jimmy, you're going like this, and I need you to take a deep breath. Come back up, because I'd like to have fun today. I don't want to fight with you. Just a little let's regroup. I see it's a lot of fighting happening, and I don't really feel like it. Sometimes they say the student before you was not following directions and lost their prize. I hope that you're not going to make the same choice. And another very helpful thing, and maybe I think doesn't happen enough in ministry settings, I think this happens maybe more in school, is establishing relationship with parents. I think we're we're providing this great service. Parents can just send their kids here and trust us with them. And I've heard some unfortunate stories of results of that. So I think it's very helpful to send a parent note home that says, hi, I'm Camille, I'm your kids' club teacher this semester. Here's my phone number if you need to contact me. Even if that parent, somehow that paper doesn't get to them or whatever, it's at least trying. And if you ever need to call them and you say, I sent a note home, I don't know if you got it or not, but I have to call you about what's happening in school today or in class or in club, and unfortunately, Jimmy's having a hard time being able to sit and listen, and he's going to have to be sent home, and I want to give you a heads up about that. Communicating helps parents feel like you're on their team and you're on their team, and especially when we're working with low-income families, parents, most of them do care about their children, but they are stressed, they are working, they are trying to figure life out, and they don't have time for all the things maybe we got of bedtime stories and help with homework, and especially if there's any language barriers involved or any cultural views that learning happens at school and not at home. All these things contribute to how parents are parenting, and I think we need to be gracious with those parents and understand I want to approach that parent as if they care. I don't want to approach that parent as if they probably don't care, because that kind of sets them up for failure. I want to believe that they can, and sometimes it's they don't know any better, but I do, so I'm gonna maybe tell you what you don't know or what you need to know so that you can know better. It communicates to students that you respect their parents, and they should too, and that you're a team, and what they do with you is not an isolated event. Sometimes they come to school and they're like, I can be crazy here because I can't be crazy at home. And the fact is you cannot be crazy here. That's not allowed. You need to learn. I don't have time to watch you just have a meltdown. So you need to be able to get yourself through your expectations for learning and for the day, and If that means I need to call mom or dad because they're allowing you to come, they're sending you here, it's only fair that they know how it's going. Not even just that you're in trouble. Just like, I think maybe they have a right to know what's happening right now. Sometimes that conversation with the student sometimes helps them like pull it together, and sometimes that consequence helps them pull it together. They might choose that consequence, and that sometimes is helpful also. So, our takeaways. Your students need to learn how to behave in order to be able to learn anything else. I think I've said that a couple times. If they're dysregulated, they will not learn anything about God, and I know that the reason we're doing these ministries is because we want them to know about God, who is a God of order and not of chaos. So we do not need to let them live in chaos. We can teach them how to live in order. I think we can have fun, and everyone brings their own personality into their teaching. Nobody is going to be like me, and I'm sure you're like, I'm not going to be like that. But you need to find what works for you in a way that works for you. They do not need to be angel children, but they do need to at least be mentally and physically present enough to learn. And I hope you have learned at least 2 strategies of how to manage some behaviors that arise. Some little quotes to end our day. You teach people how to treat you by the behavior you accept. If you allow people to throw punches in the van, that teaches them that throwing punches in the van is allowed. It teaches the other children that it is not safe to be at club. Please think about the things that you allow and the things that you want, and teach them the things that you want. And like I said, your children do not all need to be angels, but there is a threshold of regulated behavior needed in order for learning to happen. And we're at the Q&A. Does anyone have any questions? Well, no. I will be around this afternoon. Yes, Kwa?
Can you share any stories from your experience of like how you use some of these behavior strategies?
How I use some of my behavior strategies? Yeah. So I have this year, so Kwa actually asked me to speak on a different topic originally, about plugging into your local community, which I was like, sure. And then I was like, at the beginning of the school year, I was talking with some people from my church about some kids who were coming to our Sunday school who were really chaotic. And I was like, oh, they probably don't know how to be in Sunday school. Like, you should make a schedule for them, and you should do some of these things to support them to help them understand how to be in Sunday school. And then I had a coworker who was supposed to get one of my, like, we split our caseload between the 2 of us, and she was supposed to get a student that's particularly challenging that she had last year, and she said, oh, him and I are not a good fit. I don't have any strategies for working with him, so you need to. So I got this kid who somebody has decided they can't work with. And her theory is she doesn't fight fire with fire, so if he comes with fire, he wins. And I was like, well, no, because I actually want him to learn his R sounds, so I'm going to win. So at the beginning of this year, I kind of inherited, I felt like, the proportion of the naughty kids from my school. And then all year I got to think about this topic of what I'm going to say about behavior management while practicing it with my students all year. So currently I have 4 students from a family of 11 who were all adopted by their aunt. And they're all Fresh Air kids, and they're all Yogi Bear Kids Club kids, and who all require a lot of behavior supports. And with that kid, having my schedule, having my rewards, that system has really helped him know what's expected of him. But what's been hard for him is transitioning to my session. So at the beginning of the year, it was like, no way, Jose. He does a lot of this like slouchy, like, I look like I'm coming, but I'm not coming stuff. And I'm like, well, we're losing speech time. I'm a little, results-oriented, so I'm like, let's keep moving. And so he really needed a lot of support with that. And there was one day I felt like I tried everything. So like, I went to pick him up, and he was in the principal's office playing with Play-Doh. Quite the prize. And I guess he needed a break from class. I think I would need lots of breaks too if they involved Play-Doh. And so he was in the principal's office playing with Play-Doh, and he didn't want to come. He wasn't expecting me. Here I am. It's time to go. So he's like going to look like he's putting things away. He's going to look like it. And our school counselor was saying, you know, you need to go or I'm going to call your mom. I'm going to call your mom right now. You need to go or I'm going to call your mom, which she never follows through on because he gets too mad then. Okay, so, and then I had another student waiting with us, so where are we going to go? So I'm, you know, first trying to talk. First give him some time to process. Then, okay, now we're ready to go. Okay, you need to go. And then I was like, okay, if you're not coming, that's your choice. I'll let your mom know. I'm going. Oh, well, no. Oh, okay. Well, if you're going, then I'm going to go with you. Okay, so, but he's coming, but not really look like he's coming. It was just like this kind of coming kind of thing. So we eventually got out of the office, and I'm on the 3rd floor in the back of the building. So we got across to the cafeteria, all the way up to the 3rd floor. We get to the top floor, and there's double doors that he proceeds to run between, like there's 2 sets of double doors. So I'm in one, and he's in the other, and he goes out and in, and I'm like, this kid can go any way. I don't know how this is going to go. So, I don't know. Sometimes it's just me being firm and expecting it. So, you've already lost your stamp. I hope you don't lose your game. Let's get to work. And I just keep going like I expect that you're going to work. And we got there, and he worked for 20 minutes, and then it was over. So, he's a kid who just needs a lot of, like, sternness. But then this week, he lost his game, and he lost his sticker. And so the end of the whole session, he just put his head down, and I was like, well, is he crying? Like, what is his problem? I'm like, okay, like, I understand, you're disappointed, so take a little moment, let's pull our thoughts together, we need to get back to class. And he's still just not responding. I think not responding is one of my least favorite, because it's like, how do you get this kid to talk? I'm like, oh, he's not responding. I'm like, okay, well, if you need help getting back to class, I can call your mom after school and let her know. Oh, okay, well, actually, he'll come after all. So that kid is very motivated by finding out what his consequences are and knowing that they'll be followed through on. I think, you know, my very first day, my very first job, I had a student who would not leave my office and just hid under the table, and I was like, I don't got any strategies to deal with this. And it's like, come on, come out. What are you, hello? And I called the teacher, a lot of empty threats, I don't know. And then I worked in Pennsylvania in preschool, and they just moved the table, and then they were not hiding under it anymore. And I was like, oh, brilliant. Oh, I'm going to be using that one later. So I think most of the behaviors I see are like off task, distracted, or like avoidant. Sometimes I get this like defiant, like no. And it's like, oh, actually, who's the boss here? Me, you are, or you can go home, I guess. You need to have some buy-in about why they're there. And so whatever you say the reason is that they're there. For me, you're here to work on speech sounds. That's why you're here. For you guys, you're here to learn about God. You're here to hang out with your friends. At the very least, you're here to have fun together. So if, like, let us remember that goal whenever those breakdowns are occurring. Like, I see you're getting caught up in these feelings, but I thought we were here to have fun. Like, how can we regroup so that we are here to have fun and that we are focused on that? Any other questions? Okay, well, I guess it's time for your homework. I want you to make a plan of how your sessions usually go. So whatever club or VBS or Sunday school that you have, I want you to think about what your schedule usually looks like. Is it always starts with singing and then verse and then story, or is it verse and then singing the story, whatever your schedule is? And think about how you're going to put that in your schedule. You're going to make that for your class. And what are your rules? What are your little vague 3 to 4 things? Being polite, being kind, respecting others. What are your things that you want your rules to be? And you can write this down. And then what are the consequences? What are the rewards? Do you have any built into your program already? Can you link them with your expectations? Are there any that you could put into place? I think VBS is one that you don't need a lot of consequences because it's very short. You're happy to be there? Happy to be there. But when you have longer term things like school, and we get tired of being in school, or when you have kids club that goes for the whole school year, and it's like just being here is rewarding, and we get used to it. So what are they working towards also? And think through your troubled kids. I'm sure you all have one in mind of like, this kid is a repeat offender. What is their tough spot? Why? What is it? What's happening? What do you think is happening? And think through, what do you think is going on with them? Is there something new that you could try with them? Go. I don't know. That's all I have. If you want to spend time for that or not. I guess, Paul, we still have 5 minutes? Okay, so you have 5 minutes. If you have paper or if you're sitting by somebody that you would collaborate with otherwise, you can do that for 5 minutes, and then I think we'll have the closing.